Mr. Chairman, I just realized part of the reason, again, Representative Flores had offered that amendment with intent to obtain a pecuniary benefit is because we'd recently, again, made changes to the smuggling statute and taken out that important element. And so, again, what we know with the expansion of this existing statute is not only will we potentially catch up family members, but we may just catch up kids, mules. We just saw Representative Garcia's attempt to recognize children in their level. So what will the impact and the burden be on the finances and the budget of the state of Texas to increase this mandatory minimum for potential very low-level offenders within the chain of this organized crime, if it is?
Look, I don't have exact numbers, but I don't need them to tell you when you take this authority away from judge and jury to decide that yes, there's some culpability here, but the culpability raises to probation. The culpability rises to the level of some time behind prison bars. But when you expand that to say must be 10-year minimum, the costs are going to go up and up and up.
And if the costs go up and we don't live in flush times to make more beds, then effectively people get let out on parole earlier and earlier, and it actually diminishes the deterrent impact of the crime because it doesn't get taken seriously at all, correct?
Yes, that is exactly correct. And you are reciting history. This is not Ann Johnson telling people that maybe something might happen if we do this. This is the history of what happens with mandatory minimum sentences. It is why both Republicans and Democrats have wholeheartedly rejected expanding them and in fact tried to figure out ways to curtail them, because what happens is you have an overburdened population in the prison system, and then you have a revolving door, and whatever big bad deterrent effect you thought you had is now gone because these people are just going to revolve in and out. The mandatory minimum will mean nothing because you have jammed it full of everybody, no matter what the facts and circumstances of their case was. Individualized sentencing is always the best and smartest way to do things. That means you can take the people that you feel are dangerous and you're scared of and make sure they are punished appropriately and kept out of society in that way. And those people who have made mistakes, criminal mistakes, are held accountable, but in a different way that fits for them. You and I, when we were prosecutors, took oaths to see that justice is done. There's no definition of what that is. That means every single case, justice can be different. It can be a dismissal. It can be some type of pretrial diversion. It can be probation. It could be prison. It could be the death penalty. It runs the gamut. But when you hamstring people and you go, justice just looks like this in this case, you're doing a grave disservice to the system as a whole and to everybody that interacts with it.
Let's also talk about, you and I have probably experienced this as prosecutors, which is sometimes the legislature can help a little too much. Because when you set the floor too high, there are times when the jury knows what the floor will be. And when you're in jury selection, I can't even get through the fact that regular folks can't anticipate why that minimum would come up. And oftentimes, it keeps me from getting a jury that would be a good jury in evaluating the facts to determine a full range of punishment. Tell them about that.
Qualifying a jury on punishment is going to become a lot more difficult. And when that happens, guess what? Nothing. You don't get any justice in these situations because you can't impanel a jury, you can't try the case, or you've got to try it multiple times, which means more resources, more time in an overburdened system. So we do this time and again, and I won't belabor the point because I get it. I understand it. But we do this time and again. We say something's a problem. We say it's a crisis, and we go, well, let's just jam it over here in the criminal justice system. Oh, it's not harsh enough. I will do a mandatory minimum. I don't need to know the facts. It's too complicated. I don't want to dive into it. I don't want to understand the complexities of the environments that some of these situations are happening in. So I will make the simple, uneducated decision to just say this is a one-size-fits-all approach, and I'll walk out of this building and I won't care about what this does in our communities in the way it impacts our jail and prison systems, because that works a disservice to all of us. If those systems aren't working in an efficient manner, in a way that works, and moving people out that need to be out and keeping people in that need to stay in, that's a safety risk for all of us. Mandatory minimums are being rejected across this country, up to and including the Trump administration in 2018, who actually expanded language very similar to this. Eligibility for a judicial safety valve, that's what this is called. This is not a concept I came up with, I wish I could claim it, but this is something that exists in law elsewhere because it's smart. It allows the toughness that everybody thinks they want to have, but it also allows people to understand the individual facts and circumstances in any case, because every person that walks through that door has a different story that brought them into that door. And if you don't reflect that in your sentencing, you are doing a grave disservice to your community.
So, Chairman Moody, I know you and I are both Democrats, but we've also had...
Some people think I am.
We've also had the experience of actually being law and order, prosecuting, holding people to account, and actually walking this walk of acknowledging that there are reasons to have criminal laws and that we enforce them. And you and I both probably sat in those CLEs after the session where district attorneys across the state will shake their head and say, boy, I wish you guys would stop trying to help me. And so while it may seem like we're trying to tell them something that is some partisan thing, we're actually trying to speak up for prosecutors across the state to say, hey, you may take this to a point that has the counter effect of what you say you want. And so maybe give us a vote on this amendment.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Move adoption.